One of the most effective things that the powers that shouldn't be have ever done is to hijack our language, to lay stake to certain words and phrases, and thereby to lay stake to entire ideas, concepts, territory of the mind. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a phrase like free trade. If you were to come out today and say, I'm a proponent of free trade, people will automatically assume that what you are saying is, I'm for NAFTA, I'm for the TPP, I'm for the World Trade Organization. When in reality, those ideas, those concepts, those bodies and organizations and deals are the exact opposite of free trade. They are managed trade, restricted trade, controlled trade. That's when the gangsters who claim monopoly over geographical territories get together and say, okay, I'll give you a little bit of this if you give me a little bit of that. They're taking the pie and dividing it up and saying, I'll let you have a little bit of my cherry pie, but I want some of that apple pie. It's the exact opposite of what is meant in plain language by free trade, as in free people freely transacting and interacting across whatever lines on whatever imaginary map in whatever way they feel is best, without a third party, usually the banksters and their cronies, coming in to intervene in that transaction. That is free trade, but we can't even talk about that concept. We don't even have a term for it, because the term for it, free trade, has been co-opted into this North American Free Trade Agreement and the Trans-Pacific Partnership and all of that. They have hijacked that language. Here's another example: globalism. Now that's an interesting example. In many ways, I regret that the label that I have used, that I have applied to the enemies of freedom, is globalist, because it is true in a sense. There is a globalist ideology that believes that there should be a one-world government that controls all interactions between all people and sees everything, knows everything, controls everything, and of course, by the way, in parentheses, run by, the banksters and their political cronies. What are you going to do? Now, that is certainly one form of globalism, but it is not the only form of globalism. What is globalism? It is the idea that, again, free people should be able to freely interact and transact with any people across whatever imaginary lines on whatever map, that we are free human beings, and that I don't need a special, let this person go by from the queen in order to cross an imaginary line on a map. All of the things that we now, unfortunately, take so much for granted that we don't even pause to think about them, but that are truly affronts to freedom. So, again, the idea, the word, the concept of a free human being has been, I'm a globalist. I'm not the loyal subject of Queen Lizard Beast. But again, the idea, I can't go out and say I'm a globalist because people will not understand what I mean by that. Do you understand the insidious nature of this? So let's take one more example. Sustainability. Of course, when you say this, again, immediately, what do people think of? It is Agenda 21. It's the United Nations. It's, hey, we'll take our international body and we'll claim this section of the globe and we'll use it for our purposes and we'll call it sustainability. Of course, I mean, who isn't against that other than the cronies who get to profit directly from that? But what about the idea of local resilience, localism, the idea of, well, we can do it ourselves, we can grow things, we can trade amongst each other and profit amongst each other locally, and we can protect the environment because we don't want, to live on a dung heap. That is sustainability, isn't it? But again, that idea, that word sustainability has been co-opted and has come to mean part of this UN Agenda 2030, whatever nonsense. Again, time after time after time, real ideas, real concepts, real possibilities for freedom are co-opted because the language itself to describe those concepts has been co-opted. It's a very insidious process. It's, in some ways, the most fundamental way that we are controlled. We are controlled through our language. Students of Eric Blair will be well aware of this. Perhaps students of Ludwig Wittgenstein, if there are any philosophers in the crowd. The limits of our language are the limits of our reality. And if you control our language, you control reality itself. Maybe that's what Karl Rove was talking about in that infamous quotation. Link in the show notes if you don't know what I'm talking about. So, I think this is a pretty important concept. It's something that I've talked about a number of times over the years. I will definitely be doing more work on this, but I'm interested in hearing your take on this. Specifically, I've given a few examples: sustainability and globalism and free trade. What are some other words or phrases that have been hijacked by the powers that shouldn't be to serve their own ends, to divert us from the path of true freedom? I'm very interested to hear what you guys come up with. I think this is something that we need to explore in much greater detail, so I'm looking forward to doing that with you. James Corbett, CorbettReport.com.